Welcome to A Fortnight on the Isle, my bi-weekly update series. I am your host, King Crusoe. You can call me KC, and today, covering the last fortnight, maybe even a little bit more than the last fortnight, we've got some things to talk about. There's not necessarily a whole ton, but the first things first is that last time I did one of these updates, I was telling you that I was just getting ready to leave on a handful a day business trip over to the other side of the country, and, well, obviously I survived. I made it back. I am back again. It was a very exhausting trip, but it overall went pretty successfully, so that was good. I was, however, pretty decapitated afterwards for, honestly, a few days. It took a little bit of an emergency work project to actually end up getting me kicked back into gear towards the end of, I guess, for all intents and purposes, last week, you know, the week before this past one, because this comes out on Sunday, but I'm recording it on Saturday. So, you know, the end of last week, I was pretty mentally busy, and then this week, second things second, I suppose, I am now officially, finally, like, properly employed and working with my new full-time job for High Matter Books. I did disclose this fact in a video that I released last week, so if you are curious about any of the details that I can talk about with regard to that, check out that video. So perhaps quite unsurprisingly, I've been a little bit tired this fortnight between the business trip and always needing to recover after trips, and also starting a new job and needing to adjust to some of that a little bit. It definitely has been a lot of adjustment, and I still have a lot more of that to go, but let's begin the update proper with the reading, bi-weekly reading, just like I normally do, and there's actually not a whole ton to talk about here. And that is because, as a result of the business trip, I actually did basically no reading over that time. And then in the time since then, you know, the emergency work project that I referenced, I wasn't doing any reading while I was having to deal with that. And then over this past week, I've been slowly doing a little bit more of my personal reading as I've also been starting my work. So, you know, not a whole ton of reading, but I am at this point a little over 50% into The Sparrow by Mary Doria Russell. I think my actual percentage at this point is 56%, if I'm not mistaken, just past the halfway point. And yeah, the expectation of emotional devastation with that book is definitely hitting pretty hard right now. It's definitely a bit of a slow burn, and a slow burn that is like sort of topically and thematically someplace in between. Like, you know, there's some ways in which it reminds me of A Canticle for Leibowitz, and it's also got some certain thematic and topical stuff that is relevant to fans of Sun Eater, and that's the reason that I've been exposed to the book at all, is because of Sun Eater. So, you know, it kind of falls in a weird space in between those two, but is yet wholly its own thing. It is really good. It's hard to say that it's really enjoyable, but I can definitely say that I've scarcely had a harder time, like, continuing to read something that I've also had to, like, force myself to stop reading. Like, it's an addictive read, but it's also been difficult to continue on, and yet I just keep doing it. It's one of those, you know, you could almost describe it as watching a train crash, you know, but it's almost not even appropriate to say that it's like watching a train crash. It's more like being transported to the Titanic with knowledge of the iceberg that it's about to hit and the dread that comes with that. You know, it's a much slower affair than a train wreck. It is definitely it's been a lot, and I'm only halfway through the book. The back half is probably going to absolutely destroy me, but I will update on that next time, because I will almost certainly be finished with that by the next time. The other thing worthy of note talking about, I honestly can't remember if I talked about this in the last update, but as a result of starting work with High Matter Books, it means that I'm doing editorial stuff, lore keeping type stuff as well for Christopher. That's part of my job duties, and that means that I have been experiencing some of what he's been writing in Doomsong. That's basically all that I'm going to say about that. I am about 25% of the way through, approximately, of what the total book will end up being. I'm about, at this point, maybe like 40% of the way through what he has written for the first book so far, and I'm not going to say anything more than it is a vibe, and I'm really enjoying it. So, that's been some of the other reading that I've been doing these last couple of weeks, last few weeks really, and it's been good. It's definitely been good. But what is on the docket for the next couple of weeks? Well, actually, that's a lie. There is one other thing to say about what I have read, and that is on the short story front. It has been announced at this point that DAW is going to be releasing a short story collection from Christopher Rocchio titled Songs of the Sun Eater, and it is going to be the first of 2 volumes collecting basically all the stories that are in Tales of the Sun Eater 1 through 4, excepting only the stories that are up to this point from the special editions of the series. And there's one new short story that has not appeared anywhere else that is coming with Songs of the Sun Eater in November. I also had an opportunity to read that new short story, and it's pretty good. It might mean a little bit more to me personally than it will to plenty of other people for reasons that I can't specify, but very cool short story. So that is the reading that I've done over the last couple of weeks. What am I planning to read over the next couple of weeks? Well, the main thing is, of course, finishing The Sparrow, continuing to do other stuff for Christopher, of course, and that's like the bulk of what I plan to do. Unfortunately, I didn't get any progress made in Exodus over the last couple weeks, so that's not something I'm particularly proud of. So maybe I actually continue on in that and finish Exodus this fortnight. It wouldn't have been hard to finish it this past fortnight. I just haven't prioritized it, much to my own chagrin. And the other major reading project for these next couple of weeks is The Color of Magic, the first book in Discworld. Sorry for a little bit of that yellow trying to blur out there because of the green screen. It's a little bit strange that it's trying to blur out yellow from that, but really looking forward to starting Discworld, and this I plan to be reading. Basically, I'm going to finish The Sparrow this week, and I'm going to read Color of Magic next week, and that's the bulk of what's on my recreational reading docket, we shall say. But that is all that I have to say about the bi-weekly reading for now. Let's move on to the bi-weekly gaming, in which there is nothing to say, because this last fortnight I was going to try to, finish playing God of War Sons of Sparta if I could, and I haven't had time. I just straight up haven't had time. And it's not so surprising that I haven't had time, but yeah. So that didn't get done. So if there is anything that I get done this fortnight, it would be finishing that game. That is the only gaming priority that I have at the moment. I would really like to play Grime 2 soon, but that's going to wait until after Sons of Sparta. So, I'll update you next time if I actually finish that game and how I feel about it after having finished, if I manage to do so. For the bi-weekly cinema, once again, kind of similar to gaming, I just haven't really had time to do much viewing of stuff, and NBA playoffs certainly has not helped that at all. So between starting work and going on a trip and the NBA playoffs starting recently, I've been not really watching anything besides basketball. So, yeah, nothing to really talk about on this front, but over the upcoming fortnight, there is one movie viewing project that I would like to get done so that I can make a video about it on the second channel, and that is watching Peter Jackson's The Hobbit trilogy, because I'm going to be rereading The Hobbit sometime in May. We'll probably talk more about that in the next one of these updates, and so I would like to watch the trilogy probably over these next couple of weeks. I'm going to see if I manage to make time over a few evenings to be able to do that back to back. It shouldn't be too difficult depending on what the workload looks like this week, we shall say. So I'm going to try to do that. Fingers crossed. No guarantees, but that is basically the viewing goal for this fortnight, is that. And that's going to take us into the upcoming releases, videos that I am releasing over the next couple weeks. There are a couple video projects here that are a little bit more questionable, but we'll get to that in due time. This week, I have 4 videos coming out. One of them might be a live stream. I still have not fully decided yet, but we'll talk about that in just a second. On Tuesday the 28th on the main channel will be episode 308 of the book binge that will be reviewing Oathbreaker Penance of Blood by A.J. Drummond, a recent read-along that we had in the Red Company, a wonderful dark fantasy book. If you're looking for a high fantasy and especially a dark fantasy book that is short and is really self-contained despite being short, Oathbreaker's pretty great. On Thursday, the 30th, will be episode 74 of the Wheel of Time Diaries. Now that I am finished with A Memory of Light, I went ahead and, oh, that's something that I didn't talk about. Why is that actually not listed in here? For some reason, I don't have that listed in the short story section. There's some more things that I read over the last 2 weeks, and those are the bonus material for Wheel of Time. Earlier Ravens, which is the an extra prologue that exists for Eye of the World, but not in the edition that I read. The Strike at Shale Ghul, which is kind of like an academic story that Robert Jordan wrote that covers the end of the Second Age, the end of the Age of Legends. And then there's a couple of Brandon Sanderson bonuses. River of Souls, which is a collection of scenes that was deemed canon. The content of it is deemed canon, but was cut from the last book for pacing and focus reasons. And then A Fire Within the Ways, which was another sequence of scenes that was cut from the final book, some elements of which were repurposed in the final novel, so that story is not canon, but I did read all 4 of those over the last couple of weeks, and on Thursday I will be covering all of those in a diary video. On Friday the 1st, on the second channel, will be episode 5 of the Bioshock 2 Let's Play, so nothing too new to discuss there. And then on Saturday, I haven't fully decided yet if this is going to be a short video, or if I'm going to do it like at the front of a live stream or what. It's basically just going to be me announcing starting The Last of Us 2 for my live stream series on the second channel this month in May. As for next week, there are going to be a handful of videos releasing. Of course, next week on the 3rd, it will be the first Sunday of the month. That is a good time to do the next State of Affairs, so I will be updating you all on what's going on in my life. Basically, just kind of summarizing some of the stuff that I've talked about in these last couple Fortnite videos, and I just started my new job video, so some things are going to be like summarized in there, and then looking forward into how I want to balance out some of the things that I've got going on a little bit. So that one will be probably a little bit of a longer State of Affairs than typical, but that'll be out next week. Actually, no, I'm going to go ahead and say no. I had in here in big question marks that maybe next Monday I would do the Peter Jackson's Hobbit trilogy. I'll probably do it the week after that, so probably not going to happen next week, just, to save myself some time and stress in that regard, because I'll already have enough videos that I need to be producing at the moment anyway, so adding on that extra one might be a little bit much. Tuesday the 5th on the main channel will be my April Book of the Month video and May TBR, so just the regular monthly reading wrap-up and TBR videos, so that will be out next Tuesday, just as expected. On Wednesday the 6th on the second channel, this one is a little question mark, because there is the chance that it doesn't get finished in time. It will be my brief review of Ghost of Yote. Since I did finish that game, I would like to write that review and obviously get a video made for it. Since it is at this point a week and a half from now, even with the new job and stuff, I think I can make that video happen in a week and a half from now. That's actually not that much of a stressor, to be genuinely honest with you. As long as I budget my time over these next couple of weekends properly, that is very doable, so I will probably release that video then. And because that video is coming out then, justifies not having the extra video on Monday on the second channel, because I could do that the next week, and then I have a bonus video both weeks, so that'd be cool. But anyway, on Thursday the 7th on the main channel will be episode 75 of the Wheel of Time Diaries, the actual final episode of that series, where I will talk about how I think that Brandon Sanderson basically saved Wheel of Time, and how he wrapped up, that last trilogy very well, and it will also be discussing the bonus stuff that I'll be discussing to a certain extent, just a little bit, just kind of wrapping up what this last handful of months of my reading journey with the series has been, starting from, February reading The Gathering Storm all the way through the end of April here, where I finished the series and all the stuff. 3 years after starting the series, that'll be what that video will be doing. We'll just be wrapping up that final leg of it before I do, the Memory of Light review, and before I do, like, my full series review and recommendation, before I do the ranking and tier list, before I do some bigger, broader scope stuff in May, or a little bit later in May. The 7th will be discussing that final trilogy of sorts. And then on Friday the 8th will be episode 6 of the BioShock 2 Let's Play, and that is all that I have planned for video-related stuff. As I said, I'm going to be out, actually. I will be out of town for the back half of next week, going to Moab and Arches. I've never been up to this point, despite my little brother having worked there for a handful of years at this point, and because of him going to be moving pretty soon, some of my family and I decided that this would be a great last opportunity to see it. First time for me, probably last time in the near future for the other parts of my family that are going. So we're taking a trip. So I will actually be taking another trip here soon. And as a result of that, I won't be able to live stream next weekend, even though I wanted to start streaming regularly again in May, but that's okay. Taking a vacation, especially right at the beginning of a job, feels good, man, so we're going to do that. Anyway, as for the next couple of weeks, really not much to say that I haven't said otherwise in this video up to this point. I think, I've been back home a little while now. I've officially started my new job. I'm still going to be adjusting to the new job and all of that stuff, making myself a sort of schedule to run off of. Despite the trip that I'm going to be taking in a week and a half from now, I'm going to be developing what that schedule looks like in the near future, getting my hours in, figuring out when to take advantage of my free time for various different personal projects, and also when to actually properly relax, since I'm very bad at doing that. So right now, at the moment, I've been doing pretty all right getting my reading time situated, my recreational reading time situated alongside the work hours, and I've been doing pretty all right getting certain video and review stuff done in the evenings when I'm done working for the day job, and I've been slowly expanding that into doing some other stuff, just kind of in the personal life side of things, me and my dad at home, because my mom's been away with another one of my brothers, decent ways away for a little while, and she's actually going to be still there for a good while. So Dad and I are adjusting without Mom home as well. So that's fun. Between all of these things, I'm just kind of dealing with figuring out what my work weeks look like, what my weekends look like, what just all of my time in general looks like. As I mentioned before, it's been a lot of adjustment. It'll still be a lot of adjustment, and despite the trip that I'll be taking, most of this fortnight is just going to be kind of figuring out some manner of regularity with that a little bit more. So I'm sure I'll talk a little bit more about what some of that stuff looks like next week in the state of affairs, so I hope to see you guys there. Otherwise, I've been your host, King Crusoe. You can call me KC, and I hope to see you guys in the next video.